emergency for the first time in about
This is Jim, and
Receiving this message. We are Ken Jennings and John Roderick. We speak to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century.
Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost.
So whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you.
This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus. You have accessed entry 778.JB3122. Certificate number 28586. Mesoamerican ball game.
Here in the distant past, it is winter, which we still have in our time.
That's right.
And we just passed through one of the odder of our local rituals here. Have you ever tried to talk about this to anyone else in the country, that our kids, our public school kids, get a full week off for President's Day?
Yeah.
In Seattle?
Winter break, they call it.
Midwinter
break.
Midwinter break.
Winter break we still have around Christmas, but then we get another week off here in at the shoulder of the year.
Because let's be honest, winter break often takes place, it begins in the late autumn. It sometimes begins before the solstice.
You should have a Thanksgiving break that's a week, a Christmas and New Year's break that's 2 weeks long, a midwinter break, a spring break, and school should get out on June 1st and never start before Labor Day.
I thought that when I was a kid. Now that I'm a parent, my interests are a little different on the matter.
You think kids should get 1 week off in the summer?
It's hilarious that it's called President's Day break or whatever. Like, that's just how patriotic we are here. We get 9 days off for President's Day. That's 5 days per president.
Right.
Saturday,
Wait a minute.
Saturdays for Washington through Madison.
Not 5 days per American president.
Yes, 5 days per American president and 2 days for Grover Cleveland. You get Saturday off for Washington through Madison. You get Sunday off through Monroe through. I'm counting on.
No,
my
you're
fingers.
saying 5 presidents per day, not 5 days per president.
You're right. You're right. That would be a 225-day break. Yes, we get most of the year off. For this week, we're going to think about Millard Fillmore.
I celebrate his entire catalog.
I assume the reasoning is, there are places where I think there's essentially a ski break, right? If you live in a ski-happy part of the country or world.
Which we do. We live in a ski-happy part of the country.
But that's not what people do. Nobody takes a full week off in February and goes to the pass and skis, right?
I think what it is we really want a week off for Valentine's Day, but everyone's embarrassed to admit it.
No, Valentine's Day is only fun at school. You got to decorate the little box with the slot in the top.
Maybe fun for you.
It's my earliest sexual memory is cutting a slot in a box for girls to slide their Valentines into.
It was always totally traumatic for me because I always had one Valentine that I meant for a special girl, and it was the one Valentine I never delivered. You know, those situations where it's I was such a Charlie Brown, but you're meant to give a Valentine to every single kid in the class,
sure,
because they didn't want you to play favoritism. Mm-hmm. My version of favoritism was I never gave the Valentine to the special girl.
Wait, so you did not buy 29 Dukes of Hazzard Valentines and then handcraft a special one with lace and red construction paper for your special girl?
I did, in fact.
Oh, you did?
Then I never gave it to her.
And you gave away all the Dukes of Hazzard ones.
That's right.
And you kept the one special one?
So if she was going through her bag of Valentines thinking, where's the one from John Roderick?
Where's John R?
I have a huge crush on John R. Where's his Valentine? And there was none. It was because I had made one. I'd spent like a week and a half making one. And then, and all those Valentines collected at the bottom of my locker. If I had a locker, if I had one locker
the bottom
throughout
of your
all
cubby.
school, right?
Where are they now? Do you still have all your
Oh, yeah, I have
kind of serial
everything
killer?
I bought a girl a box of chocolates once, and it sat in my locker. I didn't give it to her on Valentine's Day, obviously. Right? I was in
Why
fifth
would
grade. Why would I? If I had given her a box of chocolates,
You would have been the talk of the school.
I really would have. And so this box of Valentine's candy, Brock's chocolate or whatever, sat in my locker until May, at which point my dad had stopped by the school to, help me. I don't know. He was looking for some sociology book that was missing, and opened my locker and was like, "What's this box of chocolates in here?" And took it and ate it. My Valentine's for Lori Basler got eaten by David Roderick.
This is a pattern in your life that persists today.
Oh, such a sad sack.
It's time to deliver the Valentines,
A
John.
little redheaded girl.
I believe in Seattle, the reasoning is just that the weather has been so bleak for at least 2 months by the time you get to mid-February that the school district knows that people are just going to bail and go to Disneyland or Bend, Oregon.
Well, but here's the problem, right? You and I think of that time as a wonderful time to go to a sunny climate, but most Seattleites cannot leave for a week and go to like the Azores, and so they just spend a week without their kids being in school in the cold, dark rain.
They're still at work.
It sucks.
They're still sad at Amazon, and they're having to send their kids to that doggy daycare place.
Yeah, that's right. Their kids have to go to the YMCA day camp.
I know plenty of people who arrange to take a week off in February.
Yeah.
Like, they really prioritize it.
Right, but all of the people that you know are upper middle class computer programmers.
Yes, but that is also 90% of Seattle at this point. you don't have to worry about privilege in Seattle. We all have the same awful equal privilege.
But you and I both went on vacation for President's Day weekend this year.
You were in, did you have a full week on Maui?
More, 10 days, 10, 11 days.
And how did...
This is such a sympathetic program. Tune in to Ken and John describing that they can take 10 days in Maui.
And you're going to show us your vacation slides?
I will. Yeah, I go every year because my uncle Jack, my Aunt Julia Lee, and her husband C. Calvert Knutson.
Wait, Julia Lee.
Is
Julia Lee a middle name? Do you say Aunt Julia Lee?
We do. Julia Lee.
Are you a Southern boy?
We were. That side of the family was from
Scout,
the South.
you stay away from Aunt Julia Lee's house. Yes,
Lee.
Calpurnia.
Her daughter was named Page after our ancestor, colonial governor of Virginia, John Page. But her first name is Page.
With an I?
Nope. Page. Do not contact my cousin Paige, please.
At her request. This has gone badly before.
Futurelings, do not look for my cousin Paige. But Julia Lee and C. Calvert went in with 4 friends. Their last name started with a K, and their 4 friends, three of their friend. This is the late 60s, right? So they're
all wife swapping.
Yeah, you would have a couple. Your couple would have 4 couple friends, and they all had last
having
names.
affairs. This is a John Updike novel.
Right. They all their last names all started with K, and they went in and bought an acre in across the street from the beach in Kihei.
Yeah,
and they built 4 identical houses on this acre.
Compound with a K.
That's right, around a tennis court in 1970. And there were no other houses around it. It was just surrounded by kind of dunes. And this was where they would go. They would fly they would fly over on a 727 or whatever and spend weeks in Hawaii.
You skipped the most remarkable thing, which is that their names all started with the same letter. And it kind of implies they did this on purpose.
It was the Kitchells, the Ketchums, the Knutsons, and the what was the 4th one? Oh, I forget what the 4th one was, but
Kealamakia.
And they were all, hello. They were all family friends for our whole lives. And so when I was a kid, we would vacation at this sort of mid-century compound. And it remains in the families of the Kitchells and the Ketchums and the Cobalts. And so my Uncle Jack, who lives in Alaska, is now 94 and cannot be in Alaska January through March because it's just too hard to be 90.
He would die.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, you step out of the house and it's just like instant treachery. So he spends that 3 months every year in Maui.
He never leaves the little inset part of the map in the corner of the U.S. map.
Right.
He just flies between Alaska and Hawaii.
Why would he?
They're right next to each other.
But I'm on a short list of cousins that need to go spend a week or two with Uncle Jack because he needs a little bit of help, right? Just he needs somebody there to make macaroni and cheese for him and to butter his bread. And
this is no longer surrounded by dunes. I have stayed in a condo. It turned out to just be a few blocks away from there.
It is
south of Kihei, and it's
surrounded by $12 million mansions, $20 million mansions, and it's still this very, it's not humble, but it's like surprisingly humble, given that there's a little bungalow across the street that is on sale right now for $12 million, and it is a total teardown. It's like a 1-bedroom shack. It's just the property. Anyway, woe is me, right? But pretty
I'm so
nice.
sorry you had to go make mac and cheese in Maui.
I know.
Is it, did you put Spam in the mac and cheese?
No, he doesn't want to he's not trying to have some kind of like legit Hawaiian
Cultural experience.
No, he just is there because it's warm. And he's working on his autobiography.
And you're working on your aloha.
Last year I had a wonderful experience finding aloha while I was there. This year I struggled to find aloha. And I realized that when other people are involved, it's harder to find aloha. Aloha is not other people.
Oh, interesting. No, ohana is other people.
Ohana is other people. Aloha is
solo.
So is within yourself.
You need to find alohana, a balance.
You also were on vacation at this time. We were vacationing in different parts of the world.
Yes, we also need some sun. You need vitamin D, if nothing else.
Yeah.
You will die.
It's really brutal here. How many consecutive days of rain was it before it finally broke?
It was a record this year, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't it over 30?
Over 40.
Oh my gosh.
Over 40 straight days without interruption.
40 days and 40 nights of rain. Sadly, not everyone died, like in the Bible. That's what I was hoping for.
It's too bad.
I wanted a fresh start for the city.
The seas rose up, but only to knee high.
The seas rose up, but only where there was like decaying leaves in the gutters. We went to Belize.
Oh, I don't believe it.
Oh, they love that.
I got there before you.
The airport is full of Belize T-shirts.
Unbelievable.
With Belize puns. Yeah, exactly. They really embraced it because it is the only Central American country where you can make those puns because it's the only Central American country where English is the official language.
And is the dollar the official dollar?
Kind of. There are Belizean dollars, which sounds like a huge amount of money. Mm-hmm. Hey, I just made a Belizean dollars. But no, it's the currency, but it's pegged to the U.S.
Right.
But confusingly, not 1-to-1.
Really?
We're going to peg it to the U.S., but 2-to-1. So
really?
So 2 Belizean dollars is 1 American dollar.
No matter what happens to the American dollar, you're always going to get 2 Belizean dollars.
Yes. And confusingly, both are in circulation all the time because Belize, since becoming independent in 1981, the former British Honduras, it has really embraced ecotourism. There's a beautiful coral reef and there's rainforest. And so they've really embraced tourism. It was... we spent a few days in San Pedro, which I think is Madonna's La Isla Bonita.
Sure. And is it an island?
It's
a beautiful island?
It's a key. It's no longer quite as bonita.
Yeah.
It's full
that happens to everything.
It's full of large Midwestern men in
Madonna's not as
bonita.
golf
carts. But who among us is? But everyone there, like Madonna, speaks in kind of a strange quasi-British accent still. Right. And why was I saying this? So prices are listed. So it's full of tourists spending U.S. dollars and Belizean dollars interchangeably. And prices are always just listed in dollars. So you have to ask, like, hey,
Do you mean Belizean dollars?
The manicotti is $14. Is that like $7 or $28? But we had a great time. It's a beautiful country. You ever been to Central America?
No, sadly. I've been to the Yucatan.
It's close.
But I have not gone across the blood-brain border.
What is it? The Darien Gap.
Well, no, I haven't been across that. But
that would be further south.
I haven't even been across the Mexican
In your
border.
mind, the blood-brain border is like Chiapas.
Yeah. It's Subcommandant Marcos is guarding it.
Is it keeping the germs out of Guatemala or out of Mexico? Belize is essentially the northernmost country, and it borders both Guatemala and Mexico. And we had been to Costa Rica once. The kids wanted to see sloths,
Right.
and the kids loved it and wanted to go back. And I'm kind of a, hey, it's a big world kind of guy.
Why don't we go somewhere else?
Let's go somewhere different.
Yeah.
And so the compromise was Belize, which seemed Costa Rica-y, but different.
Yeah. You got your new country, and also they got a safe Central American vacation.
And I got a second country because we rented a car and drove across the border into Guatemala.
Nice. High five. Your passport's filling up.
We wanted to, it actually was, my passport did actually fill up. It turns out driving across the border between two Central American nations really is something you have to allot an hour for.
Are they pretty stamp happy at the kiosk?
They're stamp happy, but also they want you to do a dotted line like one of the Family Circus kids. You know, they want to give you a stamp, send you into a different line to show the stamp. And at that point, that guy will be like, where is your photocopy? ¿Dónde está la fotocopia?
Yeah,
you know?
right.
And I was like, well, he didn't give me one. He's like, well, no, you have to go out to the store across the way. So you go out to some little bodega and some guy gives you a thing. And then he tells you there's a price for his photocopy, but you think it's kind of a con.
Sure.
But what are you going to do?
Sure, the guy at the second kiosk's brother runs the photocopy place.
And some little tout, the guy who changed some of our Belizean dollars to Guatemalan quetzales, named for the beautiful green bird. Isn't that great?
That is beautiful.
Don't you wish our currency was named for the beautiful
quetzales?
For a beautiful American bird?
Yeah, but we'd be spending the American eagles.
No, it'd be like the whooping crane or something.
Oh,
how many
wild
California
turkeys.
condors will you give me for a wild turkey? So you have to do this whole song and dance with two different currencies, four different gentlemen of two different nationalities, two different car disinfecting things, which looks bogus. I'm sure it's just a car wash.
Yeah. I tried to go from Morocco to Algeria once in the late 80s, and the number of different offices and photographs and stamped documents and things stapled into my passport that I had to go through. I had to go to Rabat just to get somebody to stamp and write on a piece of paper and then, take it back to whatever, Ouarzazate or wherever I was. It was insane. And then eventually I got to the border, and the border guards there and the Algerians were like, you can't come into Algeria. Don't be ridiculous.
Did you never get in?
I crossed over the line to talk to the guy in the kiosk.
To get yelled at by.
And what it was like the week before, 7 French tourists had been tied to a pole and burned alive.
This wasn't just normal red tape, or as they say in the Muslim world, green tape.
It was not green tape. It was like, you're not safe here. It was a bummer. I was all excited.
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Mindy and I once took a bus from Thailand to Cambodia just to go to Angkor for a couple of days. And it really was the kind of thing where we had to have detailed instructions on the internet of, here are all the people who are going to cheat you, and here's what you have to keep saying to them as they drive you around on their little motorcycle tuk-tuk things. You just have to keep saying, no, I know this is not the border. This is just your uncle's con job office. Please take us to the actual border. And when we did that 5 times, we eventually did get to the border.
Really?
But these people are not incentivized to make the process easy for affluent
why do they
Westerners
care?
to get across. No, I mean, it's a chance for them to extract as many quetzales as they can.
Sure, you're standing there like, why not soak you?
They know you need them.
Right.
For the only time. Like, imagine how that must be just for decades to know you need these awful white people. And finally, just once, they need you.
They don't expect you to be fluent in Spanish either. If I were surveying a group of 20 people, any 20 people, really any, even if we were in Norway and surveying just 20 people on the street, you would be the last one I would expect to speak Spanish.
Maybe I made the mistake of talking to them in Spanish, because then we did the rest of the thing in Spanish. But maybe you think I should have kept it under my hat?
Yeah, if you'd just been like, Yola Tango or whatever, and they had been like, oh, we got a live one here, and then you could overhear their sidebar conversation where they're like, look at this gringo dad, and then you're like, ha, I understood you the whole time. I have to think that's 80% of the advantage of learning a second language.
It's just so you can zing people who are making fun of your khakis?
Yeah, you could like go gaslight them for 20 minutes while they're working an angle on you.
It's a genre of internet story I really enjoy, when someone's listening to some. Although maybe I shouldn't like the genre, because it's usually it's usually an unusually well-traveled American who finally gets to
Right.
stick the knife in a local.
Right. Zing him.
As he gets off the bus, he says in Chinese, "I heard what you were saying about my hat, you awful woman." The reason we were going to Guatemala was not to get out of Belize, which was lovely, but because we wanted to visit Tikal, the largest archaeological excavation in North America.
Really?
Yeah, it's a huge Mayan city. The Mayans built enormous cities.
Bigger than Chichen Itza.
Chichen Itza may have been like at the time, did Chichen Itza have more people? I don't know. Like I know that Tikal is a bigger complex. Even if you don't know it, you have seen Tikal. Do you know where you have seen Tikal?
No.
It's the base from which the Rebel Alliance destroys the Death Star at the end of the first Star Wars
I have.
movie.
In fact, I've memorized every inch of it in my 700 consecutive watchings of.
Because I know how much you love a good Star War.
Yeah, I do. I love a Star War. I love a Star Trek. And I would, I'd pause my bootleg VHS tape and just examine all those Mesoamerican pyramids.
Couldn't you have a real VHS of Star Wars?
Oh,
I'm sure they did sell them.
Not when I was watching it. Not in 1980.
I do remember when you could only get Star Wars on bootleg VHS, and we had Jedi on bootleg VHS.
You did?
Yeah.
What? That someone had a camera in their lap while they watched it on.
I mean, we were in Asia, so who knows where this came from? But yeah, it may have been an early example of the Times Square, just shot in the theater kind of genre.
I've been to Chichen Itza, and it's astonishing. But the jungle's all been cleared away. It's there are so many of these Aztec sites where they're still undiscovered. Right? They're still like covered with vines and forest, and people aren't even aware they're there.
So that's the thing about Tikal is it's still surrounded by rainforest. Some of the temples have been half excavated and some have not. But you'll be walking through the jungle and you'll see a suspiciously pyramidal mountain, and you'll realize, oh yeah, this is on our map. This is Temple Complex P. There's a massive stone and mortar building under there that has not been excavated.
Can you wander then into the jungle and come to the base of this like encrusted statue?
Absolutely,
place?
and it's got trees growing out of it.
Wow, how cool!
And some of the stuff has been cleared or half cleared. You can climb up several of them. I mean, if you remember your Star Wars, there are these massive stone pyramids rising from the trees,
right?
And where they're putting the X-Wings and the Millennium Falcons.
Is there a guy in a tower that is wearing a weird helmet?
You do know it. You were pretending, but you know all about Yavin. No, I think, but they did send a second unit down and did put a guy up on a weird scaffolding just to get that shot, because it's all a big Guatemala National Park now, and the buildings are just enormous. The temples are like the tallest one is 250 feet.
Wow,
tall. It's it's still one of the. I'm sure it's still one of the tallest buildings in Guatemala. And you get to the top, and it's it looks like Star Wars. You see the peaks of these things rising out of the jungle like islands. But these cities, the Mayans built these huge cities just in the middle of nowhere, and we don't know why, presumably for ritual purposes, because a lot of them were built where there was no water.
They weren't in the middle of nowhere then, though, because they were probably on, it was probably like, super good paintball terrain.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Well,
there was no water?
No, often, they had amazing reservoir technologies because they would build these ginormous cities not where you or I would. I mean, you or I wouldn't know what we were doing.
Right.
But
where would you build your city?
Your ancestor, William Page Roderick or whatever, he would know, we need fresh water.
Sure. You got to build a city on a stream at least.
And the Mayans must have had, aliens telling them where the magnetic ley lines were converging or something.
Didn't they have cenotes that were full of water that maybe we just haven't found?
Maybe that's true.
Holes in the ground that were full of delicious water.
Belize is all limestone. Like we went through a cave in a canoe because that's the kind of thing you can do.
Right.
But the population was there were like 1 million to 2 million Mayans living in Belize, a country the size of Vermont, where today there are only 300,000.
There aren't 2 million people living in Vermont.
No, Belize is half as populous as Vermont, already one of our sparser states.
Really?
And it was the capital of the Western Hemisphere over 1,000 years ago. But for mysterious reasons, possibly they were thirsty, the Mayans declined. And
they declined pre-contact. It's not.
Well, that was interesting.
Western disease. They were already on the.
I asked a guide. We were on a tour, and I asked the guide. So what? Who replaced the Mayans? And he looked at me like I was crazy and a little bit insulting. And he said, the Spaniards. And I said, well, the Mayan civilization had collapsed, right? And he was like, well, it was in decline, but everyone here was still Mayan. He's like, I'm Mayan. 60% of Guatemala is still Mayan. So as an ethnicity, it was still around. It was just not a political power. But yes, the Aztecs arose after. And by the time, what had once been a vast empire was just rural villages.
Right.
By the time that Columbian contact was made.
I have a friend who is from Mexico, and her mother is Mexican, and her father is like English, and she did a DNA test and discovered that she was half Aztec, pure sort of that her mother through all of her mother's family through all of the years of sort of Spanish incursion and all the assimilation that happened had retained like complete indigenous DNA. There was no Spanish DNA in her. And that
you can understand why, right? Like,
well, yeah,
screw those guys.
But that was astonishing to me, I guess,
Sure.
in 400 years that they had remained, because her family they weren't like living in the mountains or something, but they had just managed to keep the Spanish out.
If you know what I mean. She could be the rightful heir to the Aztec Empire.
I feel like I'm the rightful heir to the Aztec Empire.
I think you're going to have to sell me on this. Like, just looking at you.
Yeah. I don't speak Spanish either.
Imagine you with the big gold headdress holding the knife.
I do every day.
I can't. I just don't see it.
I mean, that's part of my part of the problem with me, right? I imagine I'm the heir to every empire.
Yes, but you are on the altar in that scene. You're Professor Calculus
they
or
can't
whatever.
Get me up there.
I guess we've already said you're Captain Haddock and Hodgman is Professor Calculus.
I feel like to get up to the top of to be a human sacrifice. At some point, you have to submit to it, right? No one could cut your heart out while you were living if you didn't want them to.
Oh, I think they could.
I don't know.
Wouldn't
think
it
you'd
take like 4 burly Aztec guys at most?
No, you could, because you can always, I don't know.
What are you going to do? Predict an eclipse?
I feel like at a certain point you have to, you're bought into the same universe, right? So you're like, yeah, take my heart.
Yeah, I get it. No, I get it. It's like, we're Catholics. We're going to put the ash on our forehead.
That's right.
And go to McDonald's. It's a little weird.
Take the heart and, stave off the reins or whatever. I don't, I submit.
So you think there's a kind of weak Aztec that just raises his hand?
Maybe the strongest.
A people pleaser.
Maybe the strongest Aztecs are the ones that give their hearts. Ken, as you know, and as presentlings know, we are in the early stages of a global pandemic.
I had heard
a
little something about that.
Because we record our episodes somewhat in advance.
People are hearing entries that we recorded long before North America or Europe were taking COVID-19 seriously.
That's right. We would be referring to COVID-19 in this episode if we were aware of it, but we weren't. And now we are in this little addenda inserted in the middle of our show.
Well, we just wanted to encourage, I assume we have a lot of listeners who are, like us, social distancing right now, which means they're living kind of a weird, uncertain, quarantined, isolated lifestyle. And
if you enjoy Omnibus, we can somewhat assume you were already social distancing before, as we were.
So your health is probably pretty good. But thank you for taking the hit and staying home. You're doing the right thing.
Yeah, we are sequestering, although Ken and I are here with one another. We just recently got off a cruise ship where we were in close proximity the entire time. So
anything I have, you have.
And neither of us have any outside. We haven't seen anyone else.
And we're sitting 8 feet apart right now.
That's right.
We're doing it right.
We're doing okay.
The governor of Washington State is not going to come after us. But, we just wanted you to know that, Omnibus is going to continue twice a week until the world ends. We do not believe that this is the cataclysm that will eventually come for us.
That's the key, right? We are making this show in preparation for an end time scenario, but neither of us believe
this isn't it.
That COVID-19 is really our doom.
I mean, I guess the downside is that this is kiddie stuff compared to what's actually going to wipe us out.
But we are hopeful that we will collectively weather this storm.
And the recession that follows.
And actually, kind of, we were just discussing how we feel like this may usher in a new era.
A golden age.
Golden age of working from home.
Everyone's going to realize that they didn't have to be in a cubicle.
Universal basic income.
They didn't have to have friends.
That's right. This is it.
They didn't have to go on vacation.
We all become pod people starting now.
Everything's solved. Anyway, Omnibus will continue twice a week, unabated, completely free. If through some accident of the tech industry you still have employment and income now and would like to support the Omnibus, you are free to do so at patreon.com/omnibusproject. But either way, thank you for listening and being with us. Among the, I think, just hundreds of buildings in this massive Tikal complex, which is just gorgeous. The stuff that's been cleared now has kind of green lawns between the temples with Kawatamundis wandering around.
What's a Kawatamundi?
I don't even know.
Is it
a monkey? Is it a weasel? Is it a dog?
I don't know.
Is it a lemur? There's literally no way to know because my computer died.
Is it extremely humid?
Yeah, it was not bad. We were there during the dry season. Don't go during hurricane season, I think. Like the hotel next to us in Belize was very nice. And then I looked it up online and I found out it was because the old place just got slammed by Hurricane Earl 5 years ago.
Right.
And was just destroyed. So if you see a nice hotel in Belize, something awful happened, I guess. But one of the things that I did not realize that Tikal had, it was no fewer than 7 different ball courts.
Oh, I remember this from the Yucatan, the crazy ball game where you are playing with this crazy hard ball and you have to whack it with your elbows or something.
Do you remember this from an hour ago when we said the name of the show?
oh, right.
and also from Chichen Itza.
That's what we're doing. No, I spent a long time trying to figure out how to play this game.
No one knows how to play what we now call Mesoamerican ball game, which is
not really what we call it.
It's a real branding issue for them.
Isn't there a Mesoamerican name for it?
The problem is there are many Mesoamerican names for it because Mesoamericans back to the Olmecs, as soon as they could figure out how to get latex out of a rubber tree and make a big bouncy ball, they started hurling it at people's heads. And the Mesoamerican, Olmec literally means rubber people. Like they are named for their rubber balls. And so every civilization before and after had a different name. The Aztecs called the Mesoamerican ball game Olamalisti. The Mayans called it Pits or Pockelpock.
Pockelpock.
Pockelpock's good, right?
That sounds like a Pokemon.
That's I think it's a Portland artisanal Thai.
So the Aztec,
Thai street food restaurant.
the Aztec name also had rubber as a.
Oh yeah, Ola. Yeah, it seems like it must. I think that is the Aztec word for rubber ball game, probably. Yeah. And then the Spaniards just called it pelota whatever.
Sure.
Pelota loca or something.
Why don't we call it rubber ball game? That is a great name. Mesoamerican ball game sounds like something that sounds like a subcategory on Grindr.
I don't really like the erasure here. Are you erasing the Mesoamericans from their own ball game?
No, I think they called it rubber ball game. So
it would be more respectful.
Yeah. Why do we have to put in like French fries? They're just fries.
I think it's because we play other games now with a rubber ball. Is kickball rubber ball game?
No. I've looked into this a little bit, and just to clarify some of the things you said, the site of Tikal was abandoned by the 10th century, and its name translates to "at the water hole." At the water hole. Tikal means at the water hole. They did build this next to a cenote.
Well, there's no river,
right?
It may have been a water hole they found or built, or the cenote you mentioned. I mean, El Mirador, which is still surrounded by jungle, and it's a real kind of Indiana Jones spot. It has a massive reservoir system because They
had no river.
built a massive city without water because the aliens told them to.
Interesting.
We don't know that much about MBG, as I call Mesoamerican ball game.
Right. Which I like to call
Mesoamerican Bader Ginsburg.
Oltec game. Olmec ball game.
Rubber game. Because, first of all, mostly because of the Spaniards. The Spaniards had a few eyewitness accounts, but did not describe it very well.
That's weird.
I know.
If you watch people playing a sport and you're like, oh, they have a sport, but don't spend any time like figuring it out.
I may have mentioned this to you that I was sitting at a Mariners game once watching these two British people try to reverse engineer baseball from what they were seeing, and they just could not do it.
I love that idea.
And
it's like me watching cricket.
Exactly. That's what I told
Completely
them. I was like,
nonplussed.
if I watch cricket, and they were like, oh no, you would never, cricket is ridiculous. You would never understand. So maybe the Spaniards were sitting around eating paella, just kind of watching this brutal game. And they were like, are they winning? Why are those two,
It sounds like the game was mostly just punishment.
So most of what we know, because the eyewitness accounts are so scattered, most of what we know comes from elaborate temple art of the game. So
it's like learning baseball from looking at drawings of baseball.
Yeah, or like let's say you're trying to reverse engineer the NBA, but all you have are those big paintings by
Leroy Neiman?
Leroy Neiman, yeah. Like all you have is Leroy Neiman showing Jordan dunking or whatever. You're trying to figure out, because that's what we have. We have stills, and it's not clear. And the game had a massive ritual significance as well, which is not too different from how we think of sports today.
Sure,
actually.
the NBA does also.
But here's the basics of what we do know. The ball was made of latex, and it appears to have been somewhere between about 10 and 22 centimeters.
But it wasn't.
So a softball on the small end and a soccer ball on the big end.
But it wasn't bouncy, like soft, like full of air and bouncy.
No, it's solid rubber. They would not inflate it. So it would have weighed a ton. And we don't know how much the art exaggerates. In some of these carvings, the ball is like 3 feet in diameter. It's huge, but I don't know how you would.
That's forced perspective.
Play the game. Yeah, exactly. It's a tiny ball very close to the camera. The players would wear what is usually called a yoke, but is not really a yoke in any way. It's kind of a leather and wicker girdle that surrounds their waist that they use to hit the ball with. You play the game with your hips. And the court is kind of an I-shaped thing with a long alley with slanted stone walls on each side that I think the ball can maybe bounce off of racquetball style.
Yeah.
And then some kind of a wider end zone at each end.
With a tiny hole.
There's also a hoop, right? This is something that was kind of we believe this was added later. This is essentially the 3-point line or the 2-point conversion of Mesoamerican ball game. At some point, a stone ring was added, and if the ball passed through that was some kind of Quidditch-style bonus.
Right.
But in general, scoring...
But not necessary.
Right. Scoring seems to have been awarded more in a volleyball style where the ball is bouncing back and forth between people, but points are awarded if the other team does something wrong, hits the ball out of bounds, hits the ball to the wrong player, touches it with the wrong part of the body, something like that. Again, this is all supposition because, the Mayans had a bajillion codices, texts about their civilization that the Spaniards thought were from Satan, and they lit them all on fire. Only one escaped. We have the Mayan creation myth because nobody burned the Popol Vuh, the only Mayan document we have really. And there is quite a bit about the ball game in the Popol Vuh. It had a place in their myth. The famous Mayan story of the two hero twins, Wanawapu and Xbalanque. We don't have a lot of words in English to start with the shb sound,
right?
But the Mayans did. The gods of death become angry because the Mayan ball game is too loud. And this starts a long battle between these two tricky twins and the gods of the underworld, which ends with a big game of Mesoamerican ball game in the afterlife, in the underworld, where the evil death gods are trying to swap out the ball with some kind of dagger.
Huh.
Which you'd think you would spot that substitution.
It's already a hard game to play. I can't imagine it getting any harder
Suddenly there's
unless
a
the ball
dagger?
becomes a dagger.
Maybe the dagger's hidden in the latex ball?
Imagine if the ball became a dagger in basketball, how hard that game would
Oh
be.
my gosh. I wouldn't even dribble.
Sure,
Like
no.
I'd pretend I wanted them. I'd be like, I'm open, but I'm like,
What if somebody threw you the ball dagger?
don't pass me the dagger, please.
Well, one of the reasons it's hard to imagine playing the game is that I've played hacky sack, which surely you have also.
Yes.
And so a hacky sack does not bounce that much.
A hacky sack is also not a solid rubber ball the size of a soccer ball.
But
Imagine trying to play hacky with something that heavy.
you've messed around with, I'm assuming, big rubber balls. They're not. I mean, one of the reasons we fill balls with air is that it helps them bounce. A solid rubber ball is not going to bounce very much. But even if you had a kickball and tried to pass it to me using only your hip, and then I had to use my hip to pass it back to you, we would be here all day.
The Mayans must have been the greatest athletes in the history of the world if they were really making a go of this. The one thing the Spaniards said about watching the Mesoamerican ball game was that they could not believe how brutal it is. And maybe this is them kind of what's the opposite of orientalizing? If you're in the Western Hemisphere, can you orientalize people?
I think, yeah, let's say because they called them Indians because they thought they were in the Orient.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They just could not believe the punishment these people would take on the court. I mean, they're skidding around on a stone court, so they're breaking bones and getting all bruised and scraped. Plus, they've got this giant ball flying at their heads, which they're just trying to whack with a leather girdle.
But surely someone must have initially thrown the ball with their hands or kicked it with their feet. How would you get the ball in play?
Maybe,
as I say, I
maybe
sat
that's
on
your
the side
job.
of this court and was like, how?
Maybe maybe that's your job as the rightful heir to the Aztec Empire. You've got a big gold bejeweled headdress, and
Right.
you're the referee, and you do the tip off.
I throw the ball in, get it in the game. But this is a game played by the gods, but it also annoys the gods.
Well, the gods don't like it when it's loud.
Right.
But they're very good at it, and because of that crossover with the gods, the ball court was a holy spot. The game was sacred to the Mayans, and it would have ritual purposes. There are often the loser was sacrificed for one thing.
Whoa,
So not a volunteer in this case, just not as good at hacky.
boy, makes you really train a little harder, right?
Yeah, imagine if you went to Middlebury College and you're playing hacky on the quad, and whoever drops it just gets a stone dagger to the chest.
I would love to see the training montage.
It's a different person in each shot. There is apparently Mayan art, or Aztec art, where the ball is a human head. And
Okay.
which causes us
Also
to
not
wonder,
bouncy.
right? Which causes us to wonder: were they really at some point? Did a head come out? Is it like, oh, we're in overtime, get out the head, or is this just expressing some ritual angle to the game that we don't understand?
How long was Mesoamerican rubber ball game played? You're saying Mayan and Aztec cultures played it. Like, was this some game that survived for hundreds of years? And in all of the surviving recorded history, we can gain no further insight.
Thousands of years.
Thousands of years.
The
game.
Olmecs were before, like over 1,000 years before Christ, before the Common Era. So for at least 2,000 years, we have record of these courts and related art, and nobody thought, hey, let's just jot down the rules.
It was just passed from generation to generation, like the story of Ichabod Crane, except no one
I
ever
like how that's always your scripture.
no one ever wrote it down. Or if they did, it was burned by
the Spanish priests were like, oh no, we're not doing this.
Wow, that's crazy that a thing could be so popular and then lost presumably within a generation.
Well, it makes us think about how we treat our sports today. I mean, I went to the first game of the Seattle Dragons, our new XFL team.
Oh, I heard about this
a couple of weeks ago, which is like, what if football didn't have good players,
right?
And kind of had some weird rules, but at least it was on the off season, so we can get Fox to show it on TV,
Right.
and
was it good?
Well, they had to explain the new XFL rules at length. The quarterbacks were not great, so there were some offensive issues. Like apparently there are 50 good quarterbacks in the world and they're all on rosters now. Like you just can't play football with college cast-offs, I guess.
And so the rules are different from NFL rules?
Yeah, and so you know, some guy would come up on the Jumbotron explaining, hey, now we're in, well, the kickoff works differently in hopes of having longer returns. The players are kind of lined up opposite each other, and when the ball is caught, then the defenders can move. And there's something else about how the clock is handled in the last 2 minutes of play so that you don't get kind of the annoying constant clock stoppages and commercial breaks of the NFL.
And is there someone that's like, someone up there on the screen that's like, he's going for a splorg.
Exactly.
Like, oh, wow, that's a 3-point splorg.
It was what's his name? Who's the Seattle guy whose dad was the announcer for a long time on Almost Live?
Niehaus.
No, not that guy. He's like a TV announcer. He was on Almost Live.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, his son is now
JP Patches.
Yes, it was JP Patches' ghost explaining. But I was just kind of realizing I understand football pretty well, and this is to me like, somebody explaining Quidditch to me. Just imagine this is how my wife feels when she watches football on TV. Like I've taken her to games and it's like the field is empty.
Yeah.
It's like Sixth Sense where she is not seeing anything that's going on because
it makes no sense.
Yeah. She can't chunk it into like a chess player looking at, if you don't know the rules of chess and you're looking at a board, you can't see the action.
Right.
It's just a bunch of pieces.
It's the sports version of Fnord.
So it's easy for us to look back and say, look at these weirdos just breaking their bones and busting their heads open to throw a rubber ball around a court.
I think about that even looking back on the 80s.
Well, I mean, that's exactly true. Like we have our own blind spots. We live in a culture that's doing the exact same thing. At some point, if somebody looks back at American football and the legacy of injury and concussion and CTE and violent crime and everything, it would kind of be indefensible, right?
Violent crime. No, well, I'm of the opposite opinion. I feel like that there is a place in human society for where there's room for violent outlet, and I think that I think that there should be a sport of violence where the violence is truly concentrated, and it's a sport I like to call neighborhood stick fight. I feel like every neighborhood should have a stick fight team.
With adjoining neighborhoods? Against adjoining neighborhoods?
Well, initially, but then, a city would have, 25 neighborhood stick fight teams. Those stick fight teams would meet on the field of battle, which is, a street in a neighborhood.
But you can kill a guy with a stick,
Well,
John.
that's the thing. And stick fight.
That's important?
Neighborhood stick fight would be a game where death was not counted out.
You're saying if the neighborhoods are playing like Settlers of Catan, like it does not get out the same urges?
That's right. Stick fighting. And then your citywide stick fight champion would go up against Portland's neighborhood stick fight champion, all the way up to like the national, like state level stick fighting teams.
Does someone die in every fight?
Could potentially.
Okay.
I mean, there's going to be.
It's not always to the death.
There's going to be a lot of scarring. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what the rules of neighborhood stick fight are, but I do believe that there should be a sport where you could, where the possibility of death is looms larger than it does in football or baseball.
So even football to you is a little bit panty waisted.
I feel like football maybe is too violent because we're pretending that it's not. I mean, I think the problem with football is that we pretend it's safe.
Yeah.
And what neighborhood stick fight would give us is there would be no pretense. No one would pretend that it was safe, and that is important. It's important to the game.
Well, the thing about Mesoamerican ball game is the Mayans would use it as a proxy for war. Like they would literally say, hey, if these two city-states are fighting, instead of killing off an army, we're going to have this ritual game to decide it.
I think that makes a lot of sense. No one was pretending that Mesoamerican ball game was safe.
But the funny thing is we're doing the same thing today with the NFL. We say we must defend our city. Right. By sending our squadron of kids, kids from marginalized backgrounds, to let them go, like get beat up and risk head injury on our behalf so that we can say we have defeated, the squadron from Houston, Texas.
Well, that's what I mean. I think this is an innate desire that we have, a tribalistic kind of like.
Yeah, we haven't got over it. We can make fun of the Mayans and think this is weird, but we're doing the exact same thing.
And I think that there are two solutions. Neighborhood stick fight is one, and I think stick fighters are going to be self-selecting, right? We're not going to send poor kids to Stick Fight Academy because stick fighting
which is what we do today. We just call it the Big Ten or the SEC.
Right. I think that there are people in your neighborhood who, if you said we're going to have a stick fight to defend Finney Ridge or whatever, there would be guys that were like, I'll be in that.
So we just look for Trump bumper stickers?
Yeah, we'll just look for people that are like, that sounds like something I want to do, is get into a big fight with other people.
But isn't there another thing we could do? You're very skeptical of the fact that this could be trained out of the race.
I don't think it can. I think every attempt that we make to train violence out, it just the violence reappears in places we don't want it. And so I think it should be, and honestly, I think the real solution is that if countries want to go to war, the two like crusty old people that are like leaders of the country should just fight each other in a kind of wrestling situation.
That would be fantastic. Pay-per-view.
Right? Yeah. So they just have to, it's like one of those old claymation or not claymation. It's like a Frankie Goes to Hollywood video, right? You just like Reagan and Gorbachev are in wrestling costumes.
But imagine if your country lost, like, let's say your army has a 10-1 advantage, but the president has a trick knee.
That's
how stuff used to work. If you can get Richard III off his horse,
right,
his dynasty's over. Baby.
I mean, what you'd end up with is we'd all have strongmen as leaders again, because they'd be like literally butting heads with other people.
That would be perfect.
But it would.
You got to get somebody who can get Putin off his horse.
I could get Putin off his horse. And that concludes Mesoamerican Ballgame. Entry 778.JB3122. Certificate number 28586 in the omnibus. Futurelings, in the unlikely event that social media still exists in your era, our social media accounts are omnibus at Omnibus Project. Our handles were omnibus at Ken Jennings and at John Roderick.
Did you say omnibust?
Yeah, that's my new thing, omnibust.
You're going to get breast implants.
I just took Twitter off my phone and am not going on Twitter because I discovered that it was bad for me. I've known this for a long time, but now I'm committed to not taking this terrible drug that makes me unhappy.
It's an election year. You have to imagine a drug which is mildly bad. Like it's like marijuana for 3 years. Yeah. And then every fourth year, the planets align.
And marijuana becomes PCP.
It's leap year, and marijuana becomes PCP.
Yuck.
That's exactly right.
So I am off of Twitter, so forget it. Although my Instagram account is still linked to my Twitter account. So if you follow me there, you'll have one more route to get to my Instagram. You can email us, though, and Ken and I will eventually read it at theomnibusproject@gmail.com. You can participate in our many now online fora. There's the Omnibus Futurelings group on Facebook. There's a Reddit group, also the Futurelings, and now a Discord.
There's a Discord?
A Discord community is popping up.
This is why you're not on Twitter. You don't have time.
I don't have time.
You're yelling at all these other fora.
I'm over. I was over at Discord just trying to figure out how it worked. Discord is made for gamers to like live stream, yell at each other about Fortnite, and yet it's also now becoming a sort of message board style universe. And really interesting conversations happening over there in a sort of like old school timeline, like a scrolling timeline. Somebody comments, then another person comments, then another person comments. It's actually kind of a cool format.
I have never been. This is like
one more thing to download, Ken.
It's like explaining Mesoamerican Ballgame.
One more app to log into.
None of this makes sense to me.
You can mail us things, and Ken showed up today with several bags full of mail, including this weird bag that has Frosty the Snowman on it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Paisley bag, all these shopping bags that every time they go to the grocery store and they say, "Did you bring your own bag?" Ken buys three new bags. But you can mail us things at P.O. Box 55744, Shoreline, Washington 98155.
This is very exciting to me because Jacqueline from New Zealand has been asking for months if you got her Christmas present.
Hello, Jacqueline.
And it had not arrived.
Because it was coming from New Zealand?
I assume so, on a very slow
barge.
A very slow barge. And it finally, or maybe they went the other way around.
Oh, that's possible. Yeah, it probably went through Dubai.
But your book of this lovely book of World War II infographics for you finally arrived.
That is beautiful.
It really is nice. You should take a look at this.
Oh, thank you, Jacqueline. What a lovely thing. Look at this.
She says she sent it to you even though you already knew everything in it.
Oh, that's not true. Look at all these. Because I love an infographic, don't you?
We all love infographics.
I know you do.
I mean, you love World War II. I love infographics.
Wait a minute. Let's call the whole thing off.
She apologizes to me because she blew her whole budget on a Christmas present for you.
Next year, Jacqueline is going to give you a cool Christmas present.
That's what she says, but I'm a little skeptical. I don't know if she really understands the true meaning of the season.
This book actually smells like a book of infographics that came from New Zealand.
There's a spray.
It has like a... I know, it's that new
book smell.
New book smell. It's really lovely. Wow, I'll spend a lot of time studying this. Thank you, Jacqueline.
We also got a package from You Goat Mail, which is apparently some kind of service that sends people plush goats.
Oh, little goats. But you're the only goat here.
Except this says one is for Kendrick and one is for Johnward. I assume I'm Kendrick and you're Johnward. You can keep them as adorable pets, and they really are very nice. I assume this is a Jeopardy themed gift.
They're soft. You know, I have been feeling lately like I'm the goat of this experience that you've had of being the goat.
You're the lowercase goat?
Yeah, I'm the old-fashioned version of. I'm like the pogo goat, the one that ends up being the guy that caused the baseball game to get rained out or whatever.
Oh, I see. You're the scapegoat.
I'm the scapegoat. That's right.
Confusingly, the goats that were sent are signed Barack Obama. Huh. So that was nice of President Obama.
Do you think that
pop these in the mail?
Do you think that Obama sent us these?
I feel like maybe it's just somebody named Barack Obama who's probably really had a rough 10 years or so. Like he probably gets so many jokes about his name.
Other Barack Obama.
But thank you for these goat stickers.
I like it.
And things.
Oh, you didn't show me the stickers.
Oh, you get a You Goat Mail sticker.
Oh, thanks.
Think of the free advertising they just got.
You Goat Mail.
Normally people would have to pay us to advertise their website, or you can just apparently send us a small Beanie Baby, and then we just love it.
And
pretend to be the 44th president of the United States.
Instead of the $1,500 we would have charged for an ad, they gave us two $5 goats.
That's how the economy works.
Speaking of which, if you would like to help continue the production of this show, can we encourage you to go to our patreon.com/omnibus? Can we? We can.
I think we can.
And
who's going to stop us?
Contribute a little bit to the production of the show, and that will enable us to quit scrounging for advertisements and become fully self-supporting through our own contributions.
Maybe you can actually get a condo in Maui instead of just spooning pudding into old people.
You know, I feel like the thing about a vacation home is that why would you do that? Why would you do that to yourself?
Yeah, it's like homework.
Yeah.
Well, we have to go back to that same place again every year, or else why did we get this?
Why did we get this place?
Yeah, no, I'm the same way.
I like this goat, though.
Listeners, from our vantage point in your distant past, we have no idea how long our civilization survived. We hope all of the codices were not burned that had the rules of our various games.
Although we're assuming they were. That's why we're doing this show.
Exactly.
If we thought that all that stuff would survive the apocalypse, why would we care?
All these people have found clue boards and have no idea what it was.
They're trying to do a Kenjur crossword, and they don't even know what a Kenjur is.
There's a secret passageway between the conservatory and the lounge, if that helps you play Clue. We hope and pray that no catastrophe ends our culture, but if the worst comes soon, this recording, like all our recordings, may be our final word. But if Providence allows, we hope to be back with you soon for another entry in the Omnibus.